Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode, this week with Erik de Bos. Hey Erik, welcome back.
Hi there, Vasco.
So Erik, on Wednesdays we explore the stormy weathers of change, the things we learned that are sometimes hard lessons to learn that hopefully help us in the future as we get involved with more and more change initiatives. And of course we do that because as Scrum Masters we're constantly involved with change. It can be a personal change, can be a team level change, and of course it can be also an organizational level change. So Erik, tell us that story of a change process you were involved with, and what were the steps? And as you go through the steps of that change process, also highlight for us some of the tips, the tricks, the techniques, and the tools you learned back then that you still use today.
Yeah, sure. A subject which has kept me busy for the last few years is the need for change outside the team. So as a Scrum Master, at a certain moment, you have a lot of experience with the team, and then you start looking further than the team. And I've noticed that management is a very important factor in creating that change. And actually, quite recently, I have very, very, very good experience with management. I was asked to explain Agile to a management team. They were having this retreat, and they gave me a full day to talk to them about Agile. They were having some trouble achieving their goals, and they were curious about whether Agile would be something for them. So I had a day in which I organized 3 workshops with them. I did the ballpoint game. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ballpoint game.
Yeah, I'll put the link on the show notes so that people can find it.
So it's basically a fun game. It's quite simple, but it's really powerful to illustrate ideas of like working in short iterations, things like flow, teamwork, the need for experimentation, self-organization. So I did that with them, just to give them a bit of a feeling about what Agile is. After that, we did a workshop about looking at your own process, visualizing your own process, inspired by Lean and Kanban. And last of all, we looked at preparation of work, basically refinement. But how do you take your goals? I had a list of their goals for that year, and I helped them just using liberating structures. I think we did a 1, 2, 4 all to prioritize it and then break it up into smaller parts.
So prioritize the goals and then break them down into smaller parts.
So we prioritized all the goals, and I just took the top 3 and I separated the group.
And you got them to accept only to take 3, or was that because it was a workshop?
Yeah, I sort of tricked them. I told them it was just an exercise.
Sometimes we need to do that because it's very hard for some people to accept that prioritization means saying no to some stuff.
Yeah. For me, it was a very valuable experiment, because one of the things I'd been playing around with for quite a while at the time was the fact that in Agile, we spent so much time teaching people the theory, discussing how you do Scrum. I mean, take the whole Scrum guide and explain all the things about flow and Kanban. And I have a feeling that really makes it a lot harder for people to adopt Agile, because it's so complicated. There's so much information, so much theory, that what you end up is people who are confused and maybe hesitant, and they lose confidence, and then they just start worrying about the rules, and they get lost. So what I was trying to do with that retreat day was completely forget about all the jargon, all the Agile words, and just make it into kind of a game, and really make them feel the techniques and
experience the impact.
Yeah, and I think the result was great, because by the end of the day, I could really feel the confidence in the room, and I could pick up parts of their conversations, and they were really looking forward to get started with their work. So I left it at that. I didn't expect much of it, but after 3 months, they got back to me and asked me if I would help them further. So I got back to them and asked them what they wanted. I give them a presentation, really short, the same idea, make it really simple and basic. So I gave them a presentation about Kanban and Scrum. We discussed the Stacey matrix, so I expected them to go for Kanban, but they chose for Scrum themselves because they like the discipline of the events and stuff. And we just got started. And again, avoiding all mention of theory and rules and difficult words. I just took them step by step, and we got started. Just to give you an example, the sprint planning. I just asked them, so what do you want to do? We have 2 weeks. You decided you want to work for 2 weeks. So what do you want to do in those 2 weeks? And of course, I told them the focus is handy. It makes it more effective. That kind of discussion we also had, but it was really I offered the information at the moment when it was relevant, when they more or less needed, and for the rest it was just like, okay, so that's what you want to do. So which tasks do you have to do to accomplish that? Yeah, sure. Okay, so plan it all. And do you think you're going to make it in 2 weeks? Okay, that's it. Let's get started. and it was amazing because what I noticed is because they had a problem and they asked me for help, and I gave them a very simple, basic information of what they needed. They picked it up themselves. It's a question of ownership. I mean, it was amazing. Within no time, they were sprinting. And one of the things which I found so surprising is you have subjects which are really complicated when you work with software developers. You tell developers you have to do something in Scrum, and then they're like lazy or they don't want to do it. I mean, an example is the events. In my experience, developers, they want to keep the events as short as possible. But these guys...
Let me go back to coding.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't blame them. I mean, the fun part of the work is coding. And you need to take a step further to realize that by investing in time in the events, you make the coding more fun. But that's a big step. But these people, and I think it was because of the ownership, I didn't have to tell them. I mean, they would actually remind each other. It's like, no, we have to focus on this event because it's important. I mean, stakeholders, that's another thing. I talked with management about that before. The concept of stakeholders. I mean, simple question, Mr. Manager, who is your stakeholder? Well, of course, it's the employee, but that's a scary idea because you're turning the authority on its head. But these guys, for them, it was because they were really owning that sense of agility. They actually came up with it themselves. It was like, oh yeah, but our employees are the stakeholders. And then they actually started discussing for themselves how we're going to do the review and how I'm going to involve them. And it was really an amazing experience. And for me, it really confirmed the fact that Agile is common sense, and that it's like I said, the book Humanocracy, it's about understanding the problem. If people understand the problem, they take ownership for it.
It's the understanding of the problem, but also giving them empowering information.
Exactly.
But allowing them to decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? Because they could have decided, we don't want any of this Scrum or Kanban shit. Let's just move on. Right? And that's fine, but it's their ownership. And in this case, which is, I think, why it is such a great story, you presented just enough information from your perspective at that time, and they said, okay, this makes sense. We want to do it. And at that point, the change has taken hold, right? Like people are now owning that change. Yeah, they are driving it forward.
Yeah, and for me, it was really important that I learned how careful you have to be with how you present the information. Like for example, it was obvious they were going to have to work with Jira. And I of course, I showed them what Jira was. And for me, it was like a very positive thing to do, because if you show developers how to work with Jira, they get really enthusiastic, because developers, they're used to work with processes and they like gadgets. But these people, I almost lost them, because for them, I mean, even logging in was kind of a challenge. It was something that they weren't completely used to. So I was such an insight for me. There's another example, estimates. I mean, we never talked about story points, and I've never mentioned it because I was sure I was going to lose them, because for them, managers, they're so used to working in hours that they're used to kind of estimate in hours. So we stuck to that, and it worked well. And of course, if I would have stuck around, eventually we would have got into that subject. But it's really choosing your battles,
and that's a great lesson for us as change agents, right? Like, choose your battles. You don't need to be right or to win every argument.
Exactly.
And it really is about starting the change from where those people are and what they want to achieve, rather than what Agile might be or any other change. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Erik.
Yeah, that's a fun story. I really like it. It was a great experience.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.